Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman. Today, I am joined by the CEO and co-founder of Filteroff, Zach Schleien. Zach, how you doing today?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Good. Appreciate you coming on. So Filteroff is a video speed dating app that's recently been recognized by the New York Times, BBC, and has recently reached #1 on Product Hunt. I'm married 25 years, so obviously not going to use the product, but totally fascinated by this industry, have been for a long time. So really excited to, kind of talk to you, and hear about it, and also your views on that industry, going forward. I'll go back to my dating days, obviously, first. When I was dating, internet didn't exist. So these things were, non-existent. As a Jewish guy growing up in New Jersey, we went to like these parties, which were kind of like, some of them, they were actually called matzo balls. I don't know if you ever heard of the phrase, but they were like balls for like a lot of Jewish kids in like Jersey to kind of go to kind of meet other people. Nothing was really formal. Nothing was structured. You kind of went, and it was much different than a bar, and you kind of talked. If you talked, if you didn't, you didn't. So I think this is a great mechanism to get people involved. How did you come about thinking this is an industry I'd like to, pursue a future in?
Yeah, I got interested into online dating right around time I was in college, and it was still pretty taboo back then. And when I used it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I can meet people outside my friend circle. And then I got really just interested in the space, and I ran a dating blog. I started it called topromp.com, and I reviewed different dating apps and hacks for the modern dater. So it just got me into the space. And then I started Hinge's subreddit, grew that to, I think it's like over 50,000 now. So yeah, I've always been fascinated with the space. I love human connection. And yeah, that's how I got into online dating.
So how long has Filteroff been in existence?
Yeah, we launched right before the pandemic in 2020.
Okay. And how was it? I could see how the pandemic's a good thing for this, but I could also see how it could be a bad thing. It's great because people are kind of sitting around, they have plenty of time to be on their computer. But the flip side of that is after hitting it off with someone, I would imagine there's limitations because you can't go anywhere to kind of have a real date. So how did that help or hurt your company?
Yeah, so it was actually very good timing. Pre-pandemic, people were quite opposed to video chatting with a complete stranger, but with the pandemic, people got used to Zoom because of work and socially. So going on a video date really became no big deal, and that really some like allowed us to really take off during the pandemic. We got covered, like you mentioned, the New York Times, the BBC, hundreds of other publications about how to date safely while at home. So that was really the unlocked our what marketers call like a cold start problem. So we got a lot of users quite quickly, and that's kind of what started it for us.
Now you were a information management major in college. So obviously there's a technological aspect of that major. So you were fascinated by the industry, you kind of did things, but from a fascination to actually make it into a legitimate and high quality product, what was that process like, and the ups and downs to actually build this platform?
Yeah, well, I partnered with my now co-founder Brian, who's very, very technical. I met him in Syracuse when I went there undergrad, and I ended up working for his company, and then we just became really good friends. So, uh, fortunately, we started with a great team, me being more on business marketing and him being on the dev and design.
So from when you kind of thought of the concept and worked on it until you launched, what was that time period? How long was that?
It was iterative. We were working on it probably for like a year and a half. iterating, most very small user base. The people that were on it were people that knew me. It was a very simple product. You just like chose what time you were gonna date that night. So yeah, we went for just simplicity and then just built on it as we've progressed.
Yeah, so the closest thing that I could see following a process was the Social Network movie, obviously with Facebook. And obviously we're talking two totally different things, but have you seen that the film?
I have.
So is that process kind of at the beginning, obviously not the aspect with the finances and so forth, but the building of it and the constant monitoring of usage and setting moderate goals throughout the process. Is that kind of what you guys did, or did you have like a combination of short-term goals and long-term as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had the long-term goal of being like the most efficient and authentic dating app and really leveraging video. But yeah, we always had short-term goals or goals that I had for myself of how many users to get to, and those goals change. It's quite difficult to sometimes think 6 months out. I mean, now we're fully focused on matchmaking. If you asked me 9 months ago, that wasn't even on our radar. So as a startup, you pivot quite a bit.
Mhm.
You evolve very quickly, so it's hard to look at long-term goals sometimes, but you do have like a vision.
Yeah. So before we get into the actual dating concepts of it, what are the discussions like when you're launching a new app? Because obviously you talk about, okay, well, this app's a great idea. We love it, but this is our career. This is our, this supports me, my family, and stuff like that. What are the thought processes on the various revenue streams this can produce? And, whether it's advertising, fees, and so forth like that. Like, what are those discussions like?
Yeah, I mean, when we launched, it was kind of the app that I wanted to see built. That was like a video first experience. In terms of revenue, when we first started, we didn't even think about that. It was purely
Mhm.
focused on growth. We did fortunately fundraise, so I was able to leave my day job and go full time. Now we are focused on revenue with matchmaking.
Okay, so walk me through. So if and I'm not using me as an example, like I said, my wife will kill me. So if a person wants to join your site, so like the fees for someone to, are there different plans, or there different structures, or how does it work?
Yeah, I mean, it's freemium. Basically, how it works is it's available on Android or iOS, totally free to install, free to match with people. But basically, you're served a certain amount of people every day based off of our algorithm, based off your preferences. If you both like one another, you set up a time to video date or the match expires. Also, we have a matchmaking service. So if you want a much more curated, uh, refined experience, you could actually work with a human matchmaker, which that is a
Mhm.
premium service, and they will scout for you people every day, vet people for you. They actually jump on video calls on your behalf to see if they're a good fit for you. And if they are, then they'll set you up with that person, and then you go on like a 10-minute video date uh, over each date. And so it's really just they're both on filter off, but one's a more premium service.
Interesting, interesting. And these matchmakers of yours, like that's fascinating. That's a great concept that you have that I don't think a lot of other places have. What what are those matchmakers trained to find? Like obviously you have these algorithms which are great. So I know I like to travel, you like to travel. I know I like adventure, you like adventure. But what are they looking for that gives you an advantage as opposed to just letting the algorithms work their magic?
Yeah, I mean, algorithms are great in terms of like understanding like someone's if they have kids or their ethnicity or their religion. But there's a lot more refinement to that. Like
Mhm.
people oftentimes people are very set. Oh, I need to date a guy that's 5'10" and above. So if you didn't have a matchmaker, a human, they would just reject the person. They would see the height and say no. And that's how
Yeah.
dating apps typically work. They're so based
Mhm.
off the picture. And that's how
Yeah.
our brains have been programmed by like a Tinder swiping right or left. With a
Mhm.
matchmaker, they actually get to share with this person all about you. And if they talk about the height, they're very good at saying like, "Hey, listen, like this person is exactly what you're looking for." They have the career you're looking for. They
Hmm.
they have the same religion. They have these interests. Like, do you want to take a chance on this person? It's only a 10-minute
Yeah.
video date. And then oftentimes they go on that video date and they don't even think about the height. The date went great. So i- what the beauty of a human that an algorithm still can't do is that nuance that can have that like
Hmm.
human connection, kind of persuade you, hey, just try.
Yeah. Which makes sense because realistically, if you have an algorithm for 5'10 in your example, there could be a great guy who's 5'9, and boom, they're banged off, but check every other box.
Yep,
So it allows you, I guess, to kind of phase out some of the things that might not be, as important. And you're right, you summed it up perfectly. I know a lot of people are reluctant. "Ugh, I don't want to waste a whole night. I don't want to go to dinner. I'm stuck at the table." I was just watching. I was watching literally last night a clip where Drew Barrymore is going on a date that she met someone online, and she had Austin Butler on, and he basically said, "Well," she's like, "What happens if I get dinner and I don't like the guy?" And he's like, "Well, do the secret. You go to the bathroom, you text your friend, go back to the table, and have the friend text you 5 minutes later and say there's an emergency." And they were joking about if he'd be the person, but a lot of people don't want to necessarily commit to 3 hours. So even if you don't think someone's right for you based upon your algorithms, a 10-minute investment is probably well worth the time, as opposed to potentially a 2 or 3 hour commitment.
definitely. And pictures are not always representative of exactly what the person, like maybe they have a great personality. Maybe they're funny and you're like, wow, I actually really like this person. It actually happened the other day.
Yeah.
A matchmaker told me it was with a client. He wasn't stoked about her based off the photos. Then he went on a video chat with her and was like, oh, she was great. And now tomorrow they're meeting up in person at a bar. So that's the beauty of having a human. It's that nuance, and they get to know you, so they could see if you're a good fit for the person they're matching you with. Which
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
AI can't totally do that. They could do it, but it's not super accurate.
Sure. Sure. So you meant the keyword you mentioned before, which is super important. I think a lot of people's nervousness about this. So obviously you've given it a lot of thought. Is you mentioned a safe mechanism. So obviously it's a safe mechanism. A video chat's very safe. Obviously we're in two different places, but in that example you just mentioned, now they're going to meet at a bar, and I'm sure you've had discussions with attorneys and so forth like that. At this point, from your website's perspective, is there any exposure to you if something were to go wrong on that date? Meaning, something, I don't want to even go there, but if something were to happen between these two people that in essence met through your site, is there any exposure or concern on your end?
No,
Okay. So it stops there. What they choose to do after that is kind of basically on you, on the people who are dating.
that's correct.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So after the date, how are you able to keep track of statistics? 'Cause obviously you want to promote, okay, we've had, you know, 14 marriages, 7 babies, all that kind of stuff. How do you follow with people like through the process? Because obviously they do the video date. Let's use your people tomorrow. They're going out on a date tomorrow. How do you stay in touch with them, or how do they stay in touch with you to say, yeah, all right, we had a good time, we're going to be friends, or we're going on a second date, third date, or 6 months later, we're engaged?
Yeah, I mean, we keep all the data on our users on how many video dates are going on. And again, like specifically now very focused on the matchmaking side. So our matchmaker always reaches out to the client as well as the prospect. How did your date go? Can I get feedback?
Mhm.
So she actually provides dating coaching as well, which is
Wow.
phenomenal to make
Yeah.
you a better dater. In terms of if they're not on the matchmaking service, it's them just sending us an email. Hey, just got engaged. We've had a ton of marriages, ton of Jewish marriages also. We used to work in the Jewish Syrian community. They used our platform and created a number of marriages. So
Wow.
it's usually just through them contacting us and sending photos.
Yeah. So the matchmaker is really working potentially for one of the two people. So it's the female, in an example, who hires the matchmaker, and then anyone else who's on your platform is basically the candidate pool, for lack of a better word, for the matchmaker to kind of find somebody. So both people don't have to subscribe to that service. As long as one is, everyone else becomes kind of fair game to kind of be recruited.
Yep, 100%. And it's a nice to have. You could use the app, or you
Yeah,
could be passive and you could be contacted by a matchmaker that thinks you're a good fit for their client.
yeah, because I would think so. Now let's go back to the more traditional apps, which I see a lot of negatives with, which aren't yours. So we talked about, swipe left, swipe right, and that concept. And I know with that, there's advantage, but you're really basing it on a quick look. So you're really basing it mostly on a physical thing. From a mental health perspective, I think that's got to be kind of tough for people, especially if they're not getting results from something they're posting. So, talk about your experiences and what you've heard about, the difficulties of the traditional, swipe left kind of theory.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of data to support that swiping mechanism leads to anxiety and depression.
Yeah.
It's also led to a lot of people just comparing themselves to others.
Mhm.
Like, why am I not getting this many matches?
Yeah.
Again, which also leads to depression. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's addicting. Every like you get is a little dopamine hit. So
Mhm.
um, telling someone to delete all their dating apps is quite difficult for many people because
Yeah.
A, it's this fear of missing out, but B, it's almost like a withdrawal.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like social media. I mean, when people post, and I have a teenager and a girl in her 20s, but I remember when they were younger, and it's addicting. It's also everything is comparative. You're right. You're comparing what people are doing socially. You're comparing what kind of picture. You're comparing how many likes. You're comparing how many comments. And yeah, I could see, especially during the pandemic, you could really see, and I saw it with some other kids. Knock on wood, my kids made it through. How I think social media can have, you know, a dramatically negative impact on people's, psyche. And I imagine the swipe phenomenon can have that as well. So I think with yours, it's a much better, genuine process where physical appearances are definitely part of a dating process and a finding a mate. Let's not pretend it's not. However, as you said, sometimes someone that you might not find attractive from a picture becomes a lot more attractive when you sit down to them and they what a great sense of humor or how genuine or whatever it is you're looking for. And those things genuinely can make someone in your eyes just so much more attractive.
Definitely.
Yeah. So how do you see the industry and specifically your website kind of evolving over the next, 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, you're already seeing a lot of daters. They want more curation. They're getting swipe fatigue. You're using major dating apps and you don't get any matches because women are getting inundated by thousands of men every single day. Remember, these apps are programmed to be designed to make money, to keep you on the apps, even though they have
Sure.
headlines to not. So it's a business, and whether that's good or not, I mean, they all want to make money. I get it. We want to make money,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'm proud of building a user experience that is, I
Mhm.
believe, a much healthier one.
Yeah, yeah. So do your matchmakers? I know I'm going back and forth. I was just thinking this as you were just talking. Do your matchmakers also? You said they give dating advice. So do they assist in essence planning the date? So based upon all right, this is who you got matched up with. I know you had a great video chat. Ooh, I think this kind of date would be wonderful for you guys. That kind of thing. So can they kind of will they continue to work with you as your dating process continues, or once they've made the match, do they kind of back off and let the two people go with it on their own?
Yeah, so if you're on the contract, you can use them as much or as little as you'd like. So if you want dating advice, where to go on a date, what to wear, they are happy to assist you.
That's great. So for an insecure person who's a new dater or something like that, that's great. So they can kind of see you through that process if you like someone, and you can kind of focus on that kind of thing. That's awesome. Cool, cool. So let's talk about you for a second. So obviously a startup, you hear these stories about, oh my God, I have no life. I'm working 80, 90 hours to get it going, at least the early years. So how do you balance what you're doing professionally versus your own personal life?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty efficient with my time. Um, Pretty fast. Me and my co-founder, I mean, he has two children. He's been able to build this whole company, so and a wife. So I think it's about working smart, not working
Mhm.
hard. Um,
Yeah.
sure, I work a lot, but again, it's very efficient. I have a life outside of Filteroff. I mean, Filteroff, I don't even think of them as like a subdivision. Filteroff is my life, and when I meet
Yes.
people, I talk about Filteroff, and when I go
Good.
on dates, I talk about Filteroff. If I'm with friends, I talk about Filter. It's part of my life. But yeah, I like to sleep well. I like to work out pretty consistently. I eat really clean. So all these things, I meditate. All these things help me perform and
Mhm.
be successful for Filteroff. I see it just full circle.
Yeah. So I imagine, in general terms, when you've come across some funny experiences or things that have happened on the site, any kind of like fun little ditties you can kind of share. Obviously, protecting the innocent.
About myself,
No, about the web, about stories that you've heard from the website, like dates that gone really well or really bad, but not bad like in a bad way, but like bad in like a funny way. Like you fix up two people and like you have, you know, did the algorithm ever go wrong and you have like a 6'9" person and like a 4'7" person meet up and like what the hell, that kind of thing.
I mean, I think it's like it's really awesome to have people share pictures. Hey, just got married. Or we had one, or actually it was about three marriages that were someone in the United States and someone in Africa. And they met during the pandemic. It was all through video chat, and then they started meeting after the pandemic in person. So that's like it's just crazy. Like that I did not expect. And they send photos of them wearing like the African garb, and it's just
Yeah,
so cool to see that like we help facilitate that, and they would have never met if it wasn't for our platform. So yeah, I think that's like some cool stuff. I mean, most people aren't messaging me, oh, the date went poorly, like
yeah,
regular
yeah,
users.
yeah.
From our matchmaker, I mean, sometimes I hear about bad dates, and of course, yeah, sometimes dates, you go on a video chat, seems pretty good. You meet up in person, and it's not great. And people have bad experiences.
Well, you
But
look at it this way. This is what I always say, and it was a line I think from Friends. How many people do you date that you don't end up with? It's all but one, assuming you don't get divorced or whatever. So if you date 20 people, 19 of them are going to end badly.
yeah,
So the fact that any successes to me is a huge success because it's hard to find that one because how many no's? It's always a no. It's a no until they
for
yes.
sure. And dating's hard.
So
That's what I
yeah,
like. Literally, people just tell me. And when you talk to people, like, oh, I'm having such a hard time. I'm not doing well in that. So it's more just
yeah.
like people's disappointment. I think people are just like really frustrated and disappointed when it comes to dating. And uh, yeah, it's definitely difficult
Yeah, because it's not even a matter of just finding the right person for you, but you got to find the right person at the right time, meaning your life goals have to be aligned.
for sure.
I don't want to get married for a long time. I do. I want to have kids in the next 5 years. I don't want to have kids ever, or I don't want to have kids for 10 years. I want to live on the East Coast. Well, eventually I want to move here. So there's so many life things. It can be the perfect person for you in terms of personality, looks, all that height, everything you mentioned before. But there are those other things that could be just so different. So
Definitely.
you really need to have a lot of different things aligned.
Or be open to compromise. I think that's the other thing that like a matchmaker is looking for. Like
Yeah.
when it comes, like politics is a dividing factor sometimes, and some people are like, listen, I'm cool if they think
Yeah.
differently, but I'm open. And that makes it easier for us. The people that are
Yes.
like only this, not this,
Yeah.
that makes it more closed-minded. Always is a harder person
Well,
to
I would believe
control.
the example you just gave about the person here and the person in Africa. I'm sure when the was the male in Africa or the female?
We've had multiple couples where it's both like
Yeah.
male.
I'm
Yeah,
sure when they went on the site, they weren't looking to, hey, I want to find someone in Africa.
for
I'm
sure.
sure that was so far off their radar.
Definitely.
So in that example, someone who's open minded to the process and to really finding that right person. and so forth. And, when you watch these dating shows, are you fascinated at all by those dating shows, whether it's The Bachelor? Do you watch any of those or anything?
Not at all. I know all the hosts. Like it's my life. I don't want to watch it.
Oh, I believe that. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. But, it's interesting because, if you just think about that, a dating pool of just say 25 women, just say it's a male, a guy, you have to be open to relocating or uprooting your life or someone else's life. It's not like you're dating people all in a 25-mile radius.
Not
So right
anymore.
off the bat, you have to be willing to, and you've never had discussions with this other person. So you're going to date them not knowing if they're expecting you to move across the country or they're going to move to you, and so
Yep.
right off the bat, there's these inherent challenges. And I think that's, probably part of the reason a lot of those things don't have such a high success rate. Well, I think there's a lot of reasons they don't,
Yeah.
but it's not a real, genuine, real world, experience. Now, can someone video date on your site for an extended period of time? Meaning I could go on a date with someone today and then talk to them again tomorrow and the next day. So if I'm really reluctant to meet someone in person for a while, or geographically there, across the world, can I use you as my FaceTime?
Yeah. So the initial date is timed and then it ends and it says, do you like each other? And if you both like one another, then you could message or video chat again. And it's not time bound.
Okay. So, but the initial speed date is timed out, I guess, because that way. So if we're having the best chat and I'm in the middle of saying, yes, my favorite food is, and the 10-minute runs out, we can both not quickly communicate that we want this to continue. And then
Yep.
we could be on another video chat very soon.
Yep. Correct.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I think it's really I don't want to say a service, but I think you're providing something that, besides it being a fun thing, I think can provide people with something that, as you said, they struggle with. And I think a lot of people don't want to date, not because they don't want to date, but know how difficult and the hassle is, and how frustrating, and how there's rejection, and how there's upset and so forth. A lot of people want to stay from it because of that. And I think yours, while not avoiding it altogether, because it's impossible never to feel bad about someone not liking you, I think definitely minimizes a lot of the negatives of dating.
Definitely.
Yes, that's great. So listen, tell me a little bit about how people get more information. Give me the website, and like if you're on other platforms, so people can kind of check it out themselves.
Yeah, sure. So the website is getfilteroff.com. We're also available on Apple App Store or Google Play Store if you search Filter Off. And we're available also on Instagram, TikTok. And if you have any questions, you could also just reach out to us. And if you want to join our matchmaking service, you could also find that through the app or on the website.
It's funny. I was thinking, and as you were just talking, it just clicked to me. Filteroff. It literally just came to me. So that's great. It's a very good name. I like it. I'm like, initially, I'm like, what is that? And then as you said it hit me. So reading it didn't catch me, but it caught me. It caught me as you said it. But listen, Zach, I appreciate you taking the time. It's a great product. I congratulate you on the success so far, and
Thank
I
you.
wish you guys nothing but continued success.
I appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.